as stupid as it sounds, like one of the first things I usually look for is, can you tell the difference between the day and the night lighting? And that's going to be looking at stuff like, sometimes direction of light, but looking at the different sources of the light's color, direction, intensity of the light, that kind of stuff. I also just, from a kind of technical point, like, can you see what's happening? Like, can I see the objects that you've made? And in particular for night lighting, like, it's totally okay to have stuff be darker and in shadow, but it would be nice if you're going to do that to focus on, having certain areas of the room lit to like draw attention to them. Make the areas that are lit, or like the areas that are, have like highlights from whatever light is shining through them, feel intentional rather than just sort of like, this whole corner kind of fell into shadow and I just didn't fix it. A really good example of night lighting, in my opinion, is like half of the How to Train Your Dragon movie, because it's just like set at night with like crazy shadows and fires. It's also just a great movie. So if you guys are ever looking for good stuff about, or like good reference for night lighting, you should totally check that out. Again, it's also just fun to watch. The director's commentary also talks a little bit about their lighting kind of early in the movie, and is also just interesting. Not super in-depth, but again, something you might check out. And then for the other thing for the lighting is, and this is going to be a little bit different depending on which scenes you guys use, but does it succeed in creating a specific feel for the space? So again, might be different depending on your scene. If you're going for like an underground bunker, that might be something where the lighting is going to be like a little bit sort of dingier. You might have a lot of sort of fog for like dust in the air, that kind of thing, which is obviously going to be different than, some kind of like modern kitchen somewhere, which is going to be completely different from, like an old Western bar. So that'd be like the ultimate goal for your lighting, that not only does it illuminate your stuff in a way that is visible, but also it sort of helps to emphasize the ambiance of the space and create an additional feel beyond just having nice models and textures. And you guys, stop me if you guys have any questions as I go, but for the overall space, again, kind of dumb, but like, can you tell what it's supposed to be? Looking at your guys' stuff, I don't notice anyone's stuff at this point where I'm like, I have no idea what this is. So I think you guys are probably all good with that. But also, does it feel realistic? And when I say realistic, I mean, like, not so much are the models like crazy hyper-realistic or the texturing, but like, is it populated enough? Are the objects placed believably in the space? So like, if you're doing a child's room and it's like completely empty, I would be like, this is probably like the child's room of maybe some like kind of not great parents that neglect their children, and there's like no stimulation in here. Is going to look very different than, a kid's room with a bunch of toys that are probably laying around everywhere because the kid's messy. And then when I say like, is the placement of objects sufficiently random or like natural looking, one thing I look at a lot is if there are objects sort of placed randomly throughout the room, if they're different objects, have you sort of rotated them so they're not all on like specific 90-degree axes? And then if you're doing something like a bar scene with a bunch of chairs lined up, unless they're like, it's like a diner booth where it's fixed to the wall. If you have chairs, they're going to be rotated and like not all lined up in a perfect line. They're going to be facing slightly different angles depending on, how people push them in, that kind of thing. So, and that's like something that's really fast and easy to go through and just sort of like add a little bit of variation. Take like 2 minutes to shift stuff around, and it's going to make the room look way more natural and have a way more polished feel. In terms of render angles, obviously I'm looking for like, technically, did you render the stuff that I requested in the submission guidelines, but also just like, how successfully have you captured the object? Like, did you choose an interesting angle that's like compositionally nice looking? Is there maybe a better angle that you could have chosen to show off certain details of the object that are like really cool and not being displayed quite as nicely as they could be, that kind of stuff. And then I feel like the texturing in 3 main objects are like kind of more of the same, like basically just like how complete does the texturing feel? Is there anything that stands out as being either really, really awesome looking, like wow, you have like this one like really kick-ass texture that looks great, or is there a texture that maybe is a little bit lacking and kind of like stands out because of that, because it doesn't fit in with the other good texturing that's in the scene. So that's just like kind of the stuff that, again, I look at when I grade, and the stuff that you guys can use. Just keep this stuff in mind when we're doing crit, because this is all things to kind of be aware about for this class and just as you continue doing things in your major like this. So any questions on that before we actually just jump into crit? Cool. Does anybody is anybody like dying of heat stroke? Like, is there a reason the door's propped open? Is it hot? Okay. I'm actually cold. I have terrible body temperature regulation. All right. Cool. And once again, we have no ability to actually look at images in anything other than Paint, Chrome, or Photoshop, and I choose Photoshop. But yeah, so I'm just gonna go through, and again, I'll just pull up everyone's stuff. Huzzah. I didn't click the button, did I? I did not. Great. All right. And I would also like, because you guys might not all be familiar with each other's projects. So just really quick, if you guys wouldn't mind when I pull up your project, I'll just have you go through and just say like what space you were making, and just let me know what objects you personally made in the space, like your 3 main objects, just so we don't give you a lot of feedback on models that aren't yours, because that's not inherently helpful. So do you want to give a quick rundown of what the space is?
It's a gamer's room.
Cool. Oh my god. You're a terrible person. Sorry. Cool. All right, so anybody have any initial thoughts, comments on any of the, again, like lighting, models, texturing, anything like that? I will say, are you like really into SAO?
No, I'm not. He is.
Okay. Either way, I do like, are these wall things your models, or are these like little wall arts your model?
Yes.
Okay. I like how you did the like illuminated frames.
Yeah, it just, without the illuminated frame, it won't show up on the wall, so.
Right.
It's why not make it more interesting.
Yeah. No, I think that was a really neat decision. It almost feels like a movie poster, but like I can totally see that. And it ties in, I think, really nicely with the rest of the like weird lighting and stuff in the scene. And I say weird as a compliment because it's like, it is really obvious like where the light sources are coming from, and I think that it does a nice job sort of, I also use a little IES light. But yeah, so I mean, I think I don't know, I like the lighting in the scene. I think it looks really nice. But yeah. God, why? Wait, is this? Oh, there's like duplicated. Ooh, wait, you put, yes. Wait, you put TIFFs in? Yes. Ha ha ha. I can, oh. That's, that's depressing. Wait, but this one opens the JPEGs. Wait. Hang on. Do I just need to open a TIFF before?
What? So you open a TIFF and scroll and it works?
Oh, I'm copying a random TIFF into everyone's. This is great.
Why is this happening?
I hate that this is a thing, but I'm so excited that this is a thing.
Has anybody informed IT?
Oh, I told IT like several weeks ago, and then they're like, "We fixed it." And
No.
usually it works better when I ask IT stuff. But yo, this is fantastic. Okay,
Well,
scrub like real people now. All right, so is this looks like just the night lighting, yeah?
Yeah, I haven't figured out the morning lighting. It's mostly the same thing as the previous one.
Gotcha.
I just can't find a sky dome that has a elevated like sun.
Oh, okay.
Because I found this one and it's not on the ground plane, which is make it look
Right.
more natural because it's not on the ground plane.
Right.
I just still can't find one that fits the morning lighting, but it's
Yeah.
almost the same thing as previous.
Gotcha. So one thing you can always do if you're looking for, like if you can't find an HDRI that like makes sense with your space, in terms of like what it's actually displaying, you could, I'll take your crappy mycene. So you can always just turn off your sky dome light. So if it's gonna be like really ugly. But if I render this, you can go in and basically just use this for your color for like whatever your lighting is. Scroll down to visibility and just turn it off. What this is going to give you is basically you'll still have all of the lighting from the sky dome light, But if you look at the alpha, you can see that only the ball is illuminated and everything else is black. So what you'd be able to do at this point is pretty much just take your final rendered image, throw it into Photoshop, and then just composite whatever random image you want behind it. Because yeah, sometimes it's either like no matter what you do to an HDRI, like it never quite displays the right thing, but it might give you like great lighting. So if you were able to like find, again, just a random image.
Is it okay if I just make a plane that's purely white or like whatever the color is? And because my lighting is actually, I didn't use sky dome light.
Oh, okay.
It's a sky dome. Not for that render. I was trying
Yeah.
to like see how it actually works now. Because I have fireflies on the wall.
Wait, say it one more time?
Like those little white spots you find sometimes on the rendering.
Oh, yeah.
I was trying to get rid of it.
Okay.
So I switched back to a sky dome light and bump up the sample.
Yeah.
But
Oh.
there's still a little bit of it.
Yeah, so that, I actually noticed the other day, let me actually like open your Maya file like a real person. So I noticed the other day, that might be something where if you bump up the samples like really crazy high for the sky dome light and that still doesn't fix the issue, you might just need to adjust your overall diffuse samples. Give me 10 seconds to pull up your file. So that would be, I did actually want to go over some just like render samples with you guys. I wrote this in the email I sent out as well, but I'll go over it really quick now. Hopefully this file will work. Give me a sec. It's lagging really hard. But yeah, so there's like a bunch of different places that you can adjust samples. You mentioned, again, like you were using the one in light. That's usually my first go-to, especially if you're getting like really samply shadows. I think, there we go. It lives. All right, so that looks sort of like a render. All right. Render faster. All right, but there's like a few other things that you can do to increase or to potentially decrease your sample time. It depends a little bit on what you have in your scene. But if you're not using, I'm terrified to actually click anything while it's doing stuff right now, but like, if you're not using stuff like transmission, which in this case, transmission for like glass or like stuff like that, in which case you're totally using that, so leave those samples as is. But if you're not using stuff like subsurface scattering or environmental fog, you could conceivably just set all of those render settings down to 0, and sometimes that'll help speed up your render time slightly. Oh, that looks correct. Oh, I have the alpha turned on. Okay, great. Perfect. I do that every single time. I'm like, I broke it. All right, so I'm just gonna say, it looked like the most of the like sampling issues were kind of in this vicinity. One thing you guys can also do, if you, like, I kind of hate this progressive refinement where it like slowly makes everything better. I think it's hard to look at. You can actually go in, if you do render, and just turn off progressive refinement. It'll render in like little chunks. So like when the whole image has stopped looking like black chunks, like you know it's done. I usually switch over to that for like final rendering. But yeah, so in this case, even like bumping up the samples on your HDRI, like you said, didn't super help. So that might be an instance where I would just open my render settings, go to Arnold, and oh wow, okay, so you've even set your diffuse up to like 4 already. I was gonna say maybe like try setting that up a little bit higher. In this case, I would say like subsurface. So again, here's transmission is for stuff like glass. In this case, since you have glass windows, it might actually be what's causing this issue. But like presumably you don't have subsurface scattering. That's usually for stuff like skin. Some of the presets for like milk and jade use it as well. That's when light actually goes into an object, bounces around and scatters. So if you don't have that, you can just turn that off. Same thing with volume. And in this case, yeah, that just seems real sampling gross. All right, I'm turning off progressive refinement because it takes forever. Um, well, that's helpful. Good, yes. Okay, so this is just taking forever to render because the samples are set so high. All right, let me see what happens actually if I just like get rid of the glass temporarily. Ha ha ha. Just hide all the windows. All right, great. And just set this back down to like the default 2, 3, and 2. All right. Curiosity. Usually if I'm doing render stuff and I'm like, I can't figure out what's causing the issue, I'll just sort of set everything back to 0 and then just sort of like start fiddling with things. So in this case, like it's still like kind of funky. If setting the diffuse fixes it, then I would expect that it might, again, possibly be something to do with the windows being there and like the light shining through the windows. That might do it. Wait, oh.
I set it to 0, but
Oh, you were using... Okay. Yeah, let me just break the connection on that real quick, because that... Especially because I just set the samples to that for 0. That 100% might be doing something to that. So also for your background, you mentioned you were using the dome light, and you're using this background legacy just to get this as a picture in the background? Is that what you're doing here?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so it's probably maybe better to use an HDRI for that. Wow, this is still like really... it's also entirely possible actually that this is coming from like a localized light. Troubleshooting where samples are coming from is kind of very annoying. Alright, so... Alright, so it might actually just be, I'm looking at like that, it looks like the main light in the room only had one sample in it. So I'm like, that might actually be causing the issue. Usually I blame the HDRI, and that's like the first thing that I yell at. That's clearly not doing anything. Alright. Weird. Bizarre. Alright, so there's probably just like some weird hidden light somewhere. That's like actually really weird that like you can bump the sample so high and it's like not fixing this at all. I can maybe take a look at that later a little bit, but that is usually, I guess, sort of my strange little process for kind of troubleshooting where renders are. I will like half the time actually just sort of turn everything off in the scene and then turn things on one by one, and like as I see the problem emerge, I can kind of pinpoint like, okay, maybe like that's what's causing the issue, if that makes sense. So like go through, like hide all of your lighting, turn all your lights on one by one, and as soon as you see the samples, you can address like where they're coming from in a little bit more targeted way than sort of like randomly clicking on things like I've been doing. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but yeah. But yeah, and then in terms of using the, where is it? Shoot. Render settings. So this is basically the equivalent if you guys, so I think I mentioned this in a previous class. Anytime you guys see legacy next to something in Maya, it's basically saying, hey, this is like an old algorithm. We're phasing it out. Like in a version or two, it's not going to be here. If you ever need to recreate this effect, you can just make a gigantic sphere around your scene, assign it a surface shader. So that would be like the sort of gross default Maya material. Just new material, and set that to surface shader. Surface shaders are just like a generic Maya texture. They are not affected by lighting at all, so if you put a color map into this, it's going to show up exactly as that color map is, no matter how shadowed the area it's sitting in. It's always going to look pretty much exactly like the color map. So you can use those for like background stuff if you just want, again, like something to cause reflections in your scene or like to put a background in. You can totally use these guys. But yeah. I got a little bit sidetracked, but does that help with, you asked a question, was that helpful to your question? I think, sort of, maybe. Okay. Anywho. But yeah, so, yeah. What? Alright, so does anybody have any other, like, thoughts, comments, or, like, you know, things that you like or, like, could maybe be improved in this scene? Besides the creepy pillow being terrifying. Alright, do I need to call a random name? I'm going to my hat. Alright, Sana, I picked your name out of the hat. I think this is like your group project, but do you have any like thoughts of stuff that you like or like that could be improved?
Wait, what do you mean any thoughts? Like on Siler specifically or on my own or?
On this project specifically that's pulled up.
There's some things I would change, like the bed sheet. Other than that, I think he did a good job.
I share those sentiments.
One nitpicky notion I can make, though, it's probably measured out, and I'd have to like look at the scene myself.
Wait, can you speak up a little bit? Sorry.
I'd have to like look at the scene myself so that you can get like a better measure of it, but the desk feels a bit low.
Oh, this is not my object, so I just use it.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
It's very daunting.
Okay.
No, that's a fair point though. But yeah.
Quick question, it didn't say we had to turn in our Maya file, right?
For this week?
Yeah.
I don't think I asked for the Maya file.
Okay, cool. Just making sure.
I did do a little bit of a weird thing, and I realized this yesterday when someone asked about it in my class. So I'm sorry if this caused confusion, but there was like 2 separate docs I made, and I only linked you guys to one. So in terms of like what I'm grading you guys on for the submission, I will go by the doc that I actually linked you guys, even though I went over like both and an additional one in class, because that was totally my bad. So I'm sorry, like if anyone noticed that and was like confused by that and like what they were supposed to submit, that was totally my bad. Like sorry about the confusion. But yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think overall like the lighting for this looks really nice. I think one thing that helps to make this scene successful is the fact that you do have this, I just noticed this is like a wheelie couch, but you do have this like very like overhead shot where you do like actually see all of the sources of lighting in the scene. So like it's really obvious that like there's like a little lamp here for like a reading light or whatever, so that by the time you get to the creepy pillow render, it's like you know that light is supposed to be coming from somewhere. It doesn't look as sort of randomly placed just to light up the bed, if that makes sense. And I think also like the fall off of the lights makes a cool effect.
Wait, can you go back to the bed sheet one? Because there's something up with the normal. Wait, what's up with the normal map on the pillow?
I don't know what happened here.
That is really
It's
weird.
supposed to be a color map, but it's not.
Did you turn your color map into the normal map?
I don't think so, because sometimes it renders right, sometimes it doesn't.
That's
I
weird.
don't know why. I even assigned new texture to it. It's still doing that thing. I don't know.
That's very strange. I honestly, yeah, I like didn't even notice that.
Why didn't you turn the color map into the normal map?
Does it say something
It's
about
not a
how
lot
you
of
like
people. Sometimes it renders
that they
right.
get phased by the bed sheets?
What?
Does it say something about my path in life with the bed sheets that it phased me?
I have no idea. But yeah, I mean, like I think overall, like again, this is a really, I think, pretty successful scene, especially in terms of lighting, and just like a weird thing. This is a really nice looking floor. I do think that this is quite a good example of, I don't know if you like handmade this texture or like just found it on a random internet site, but either way, like it's a good example of kind of a naturalistic way that light hits the floor. So like in the color map, like you clearly see like there are different floorboards here, but there's also a corresponding bump map that sort of highlights them. So as the light's shining across it, it sort of occludes in between the different boards. But also there's like a little highlight that shows up on the corners, which just helps to make that look a little bit more dimensional and realistic. I don't know, I'm kind of a nerd for like nice looking floors. But yeah. So any other thoughts, questions, comments on this project before we go on? Go. And I'm just going to casually grab one of these TIFF files and bring that into my other scene. All right. That is like legitimately the best discovery that I made in forever. Zip files. All right, we have files. All right, cool. Do. Aha, open this. Then I can scroll through. All right. So I feel like it's kind of obviously like the same setting, but do you want to give us a quick rundown of the objects that you made, Ziad, for this? Do you want to give a quick rundown of, I mean, like, this is obviously still like a gamer room, but do you want to give everyone a quick rundown of like the objects that you made for this scene?
Basically, I have to make this bedside table with the station controller on the table and the headset that's hanging on the monitor.
Cool. Yeah, so we were talking a little bit, I guess, like, about stuff. So are there any, were you looking for like ways to populate the scene? Is like, all right. So does anyone have thoughts, comments on random things, but also like ideas of stuff that you've seen in like gamers' rooms that could be used to populate this space?
You can probably easily be able to mass produce console discs.
Mm.
The little DVD cases for games. You can just easily mass produce those because they're all basically the same size and then just put different jackets around all of them.
Yeah.
And then you can basically just, because you have a console controller, so if you just make a library of discs, that could probably add something to it.
Yeah.
Or you could send them. Put a little trash can on your desk.
Nice. I would buy a trash can. You could also like play off the trash can thing. I don't know. It seems like there's like a stereotype where like, oh, like all the gamers drink like Monster or like energy drinks or whatever. You could like fill it with like crumpled up Monster cans somewhere if you were just looking for like a weird thing to populate the space with.
Like tubs of cheese fuel or something.
Tubs of what?
Tubs of cheese fuel,
Oh, I think you said cheese fill, and I'm like,
cheese fill- I mean,
ugh.
cheese with, I don't know, some of
Yeah.
you guys have bad diets.
It's true. But yeah, I mean, that's actually good. You could put like little like munchy snacks around, like if they just had like a, giant bulk box of like potato chip bags or something floating around. Like that would actually probably be really hilarious. God. But I always find that like if you're ever looking for ways to populate the scene for something like this, I feel like it's a little bit more modern day and like kind of is like something that we're all like a little bit more familiar with. But think of either like a particular person you know or like design a person and like their habits. Like, is this the type of person who would literally just stay in their room and like not accept real food and like they only eat pizza and chips? Because like there'd probably be remnants of that around the room that you would see. And then again, like Sana was saying, you could look for like the game jackets would be a great, really easy way to change textures on stuff. You could also do posters. And this just kind of goes for anyone. Like if you guys are like putting posters on your wall, I would encourage you to think about how they're attached to the wall. So if it's tape, I mean, you can kind of just like stick the upper corners on. If it's a tack pin, like, yep.
Okay, yeah, I was actually going to say, I have posters in my room and I do use tack pins, but they're so small,
Yeah.
they're to scale. How do you show that they're there, or are you just going to take our word for it?
I will take your word for it, but I have follow-up thoughts on that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, if you're making tack pins, like model tack pins, and then the other thing that I would usually say for posters, it might be a little bit counterintuitive, but like even though it's just like a piece of paper on a wall, usually they end up curving a little bit. Like one of the bottom corners might flare out. If you have a tack pin in the middle, a lot of times like the upper outer corners will sort of like start curling down a little bit. So like Sana, for your tiny tack pins, you could kind of show that the anchor was in the center just by having those corners curl down, if that makes sense.
Like the corners pulled down?
Yeah, let me actually just Google
Because
pictures.
I'm trying to make it as low quality as possible, so having,
Right.
you know what I mean?
That's true. I think it depends, like, this is far more organized than I was hoping for. Yes. So I mean, there's definitely, like, you could still probably make it pretty low poly, like, even if you did something where, This is like a very ugly little plane. All right. So even if you had something like this, just like grab this, and this is like kind of like a gross low poly example, but you could just like grab this corner and even just like peel it out a little bit like this. And this is, again, like not the most fantastic example of this. It still looks like pretty blocky, but I mean, even that gives it a little bit more depth and dimension, like as it sits on the wall, if that makes sense. So it all just, and you don't need to do that necessarily for all of them, but like it is, I think, nice to put a little bit of variation in. And I noticed like a lot of times, I mean, with the exception of like these people who have apparently just like permanently attached these to the wall, like these are like super neat. But paper, like a lot of times, like it will rip, it will have like a little phrase in it. If you look at this weird poster like physically just in this room, which has been here for like 4 years, I don't know where it came from. But like it's anchored to tape, so the top is pretty straight. But the sides are like curling a little bit. There's like some bends in it. The bends are like the little crinkles or something you could do with a normal map. But if you look at the bottom, I don't know if you can see it from everywhere you are, but like it kind of bows out a little bit. So again, could potentially be a really easy way to create a little bit of variation. And then if you're shining a light down from the ceiling onto those, it's going to create shadows and help create a little bit more of a dimensional effect. So that's does that make sense? Kind of my weird, cool. But yeah, so that's, I guess, more or less my thoughts. Does anyone else have any ideas for like populating the space, or? Cool.
You mentioned disc jackets, and like discs themselves would probably be an easy thing to do, though I don't know how people use like still disc media. So that would just
Yeah,
be
that's fair.
how you detail it. So it doesn't have PS4 controllers, so.
Yeah. You could also maybe throw in like a little shelf with like books or something like that, depending on what they want, or just like fill it with games if you're looking for a way to like populate the wall that's not just posters. But yeah. And then you said you were like still kind of like working on your lighting. Do you want any feedback on that, or just kind of like still working on it?
Yeah, no, I'm still working on this. Not really that.
Fair. Cool. I do like the trippy light setup that you have. I still enjoy that as a strange, colorful thing. All right, cool. Any other like final thoughts, comments, questions for this? Alrighty then. Are you guys just all like alphabetically right next to each other in the? All right. So Sana, do you wanna give us a brief rundown of this third gamer's setup room, and just mostly just tell us what objects you made?
Okay, so it was just furniture and decor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did a desk, and so that's both of those are day lighting, the other two are night lighting.
Cool.
And that's my decor object. It's just a Moogle plush that I found on an online store, and I was like, that's cute.
That is. It's super creepy, but I like it.
And also the one from first turn had geometry that made me gag, so I included that.
I was gonna say, I like how the Moogles are like a recurring trend in your work. And you're rendering this in Octane, yeah?
No, Octane was like,
Having licensing
yeah,
issues?
they were
Yeah.
like, we did activate your license before, but now we don't feel like it. And Unity isn't, customer service isn't helping me.
Right.
So now this is just, do you know post-processing stack by chance?
No.
It's just like a camera add-on.
Okay.
And so this is just a render from the game view. So I'm having
Okay.
some issues with the shadows, but I think that's because this is the Unity lights that haven't been transferred into the high definition pipeline.
Okay.
So once I configured them before the pipeline, I think the shadow should fall a little bit better.
Gotcha.
But yeah, but this is sort of day lighting.
Okay. No, but I was gonna say I actually like how you have the shadow falling across the desk. Quick follow-up question on Octane. Were you working on a personal computer or the lab computers for that?
Computers.
Okay.
And I also tried personal computer, just didn't make a difference.
Okay. Because I did ask IT, because a lot of people in my classes yesterday mentioned that they were having crazy Octane issues or like rendering issues because of licensing. So I poked IT about that. I'll let you guys know if they say anything interesting.
Because it should be free, because the plugin is free as a part of the Unity Assets Store.
Right.
And so, and with an account, you should just be able to activate it just fine, but for some reason.
Yeah. And it seems like that was like a universal problem that like everyone was having.
Yeah.
So I'll let you. I'll if IT says anything interesting, I'll email all of you guys and let you know. I also want to say, so if you're doing low poly and you like haven't started rendering in game yet, or it somehow exploded and you like have this stuff to render in Arnold, if you want to do that, that's fine. Or by Arnold, I mean any of the Maya renderers. And you can still, if you decide to use Maya, you can still do low poly. Kind of just like, I'll leave it up to you guys, like whatever you're comfortable with and your discretion is in terms of getting stuff done by the timeline. I would rather have, I feel like it's still good practice for you guys to like do low poly stuff, even if you render it in Maya. So again, I'll kind of like leave that up to you depending on what crazy stuff is happening with the labs and the licenses and all that stuff. But I would definitely rather you guys turn in something that looks good and was, you know, if it's not rendered in Engine, like it still looks good, so that would be preferable than like something really sketchy and like a weird screenshot of like a Unity screen or something like that. But also, yeah, I mean, if you have, yeah, it seems like you're still like doing good stuff with Unity, like specifically. But yeah, a weird spiel on that. Any questions about the logistics of rendering in terms of like Unity versus Maya? All right.
Question. So
Yep.
I want to make it so there's extra stuff in the trash can. It's not just weirdly empty. But then making crumpled pieces of paper is so high quality that it's like not even funny. So like, what would you put in there? Like if I make a singular can I just duplicate the can a ton of times and make it so that they just drink a lot of cans of soda?
I would say that would be completely acceptable. The other thing that I found the other day, I want to see just really quick if I can go through this. Actually, first let me make sure they actually have the plugin. Yes, they do. So I'm just gonna like really fast drop like a very ugly end cloth little paper thing. Making paper is like the worst thing ever. Usually what I'll end up doing, and I think
I found a tutorial for it. So like
for making paper.
yeah, for making crumpled paper.
Okay. I'm sure it's like a better workflow than whatever the heck I'm about to do. But yeah, like paper is always one of those like super just weird irritating things. So usually my process for making paper, and like again, I don't promise that this is a good process by any stretch of the imagination. Where's my plane? Is pretty much just grabbing like a little piece of cloth and like bending it a few times. Why do I have like 7 versions of this? And just sort of, again, just like dropping it. All right, perfect. Folded completely flat. But I found this really cool thing in Unity, or I'm sorry, not Unity, in ZBrush. I'm just going to. So there's 2 ways to do this. So if you have ZBrush, there's a plugin that should just be loaded automatically called Decimation Master. And you can also do this in Mesh Mixer. I think I sent out a video about that specifically for bed sheets, but like for paper, it also kind of works the same. Actually, let's just see what happens. There's also like the modeling. If you go to Mesh Reduce on your mesh, it'll start decreasing it by like usually 50% increments. Sometimes, I mean, like in this case, it kind of just made it like a weird shape. If the paper was like a little bit better shaped to begin with, that could potentially create like those sort of angular effects of the paper. You could also play with it, and again, ZBrush. I'm just gonna really quickly import my horrendous model that I just made. Where am I going? You show me the desktop, please. Great. Thing. Just gonna switch that to edit. if you do Shift F in ZBrush, it'll show you your wireframe. But if you go to Z plugin and then Decimation Master, this will does a great job of stripping poly count without distorting your model. So I usually just check on these guys. I'm not gonna super crazy go through this. This is basically just gonna say don't affect your borders and destroy the shaping of the borders of your object. Keep UVs if you're doing texturing. You should totally turn this on. And preprocess current is basically just going to, if you click that, it'll just sort of store this in the memory of the computer so that the rest of the processes go a little bit faster. And then at that point, you can say what percent of decimation is how much geometry do you want to keep. So if you say 20%, it's not remove 20% of the geometry. It's saying I only want 20% of the current geometry. And then it gives you a little countdown here. Just set this to 12 and just say decimate current. That was a gross thing I just did. But this is something else you could potentially use. It works pretty nicely for bed sheets. Possibly not quite so much for paper. But yeah, doing paper is weird. But yeah, you could totally fill that with candy bar wrappers or just even old mail. I imagine this person maybe gets a lot of spam mail and they just chuck it out. I don't know. Just I'm thinking of things that are less annoying than paper to make, but I've totally made paper before and I've looked up a billion tutorials and it's always super irritating. But incidentally, side tangent, if you guys are ever doing high poly sculpts that you need to export the actual mesh for rather than a texture map, Decimation Master, best friend ever. I did a sculpt over the break for a client. It was 10 million polys and Decimation got it down to 500,000 polys without losing any detail. It was amazing. Anywho, sorry, that was kind of a weird tangent. But yeah, so I mean, whatever you feel makes sense to fill the trash can with is totally fine. Did you have any other questions about your project or?
Not really. Also, the thing on the shelf that you asked during my critique what it was, those are books.
Oh, these guys?
Yeah,
Which books are they?
that's Naruto.
Okay, I was wondering about that. I don't have any experience with that apart from just being able to recognize some of the characters as oh, that's a Naruto character. But yeah, all right, cool. So does anybody else have any thoughts, questions, comments about lighting, room population, texturing, etc.? Shall I call a random person? I'm gonna call a random person. Last call for thoughts. All right. Sana, I'm not calling you again and for your own project.
I think it looks great.
Well, awesome. It'd be super weird if I graded you on randomly assigned feedback and you got your own project. 5,000%. All right, cool. So Kristen, do you have any thoughts or comments on any of these renders? Anything that you see that you like or think could be improved for anything?
It looks good to me. She's in my group.
I mean, the lighting, I understand. For Unity, it's kind of you have to throw in a bunch of different lights and kind of have them light look like they're doing
Yeah. Yeah, lighting in Unity is light linking before Arnold came along, and it's it is just a bunch of lights to achieve a fairly simple effect. Also, did you model in all of the little cubes in this trash can?
I did the thing where you take a cylinder and then you use the
Poke tool, yeah.
Yeah,
So you did actually model in this mesh.
so that's, yeah.
That's a high poly trash can right
It's
there.
not the most high poly I know in my whole room. And it's not even a decor or furniture or hero object.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
It looks you could have just done a plane with a card texture on it.
Yeah, but I'm just so proud of it.
Yeah, no, it is fun making that kind of stuff. I will grant you that. But yeah, I do like how you have this light coming across the desk. This is kind of a good example of using the lighting and the shadows to highlight what you want the viewer to look at, I think. But yeah, cool. All right. Last questions or comments before we wander on. Was that? Yep. So, for the trash can?
Yeah.
I would probably like literally just take a cylinder. Do you remember how we did like card grass and stuff in class?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just take a cylinder, and then do pretty much the same thing. So just make a map that looks kind of like this little grate texture, like this metal grate texture, and then basically just throw that on. The fact, like, you can have plane or cards that are any shape. They don't have to just be like planes. And incidentally, if you're ever playing a game and you like, if there's ever a barbed wire fence or like a wire fence, just like walk up to it and look at it, and if you get close enough and kind of like mouse around, you'll see it's pretty much that exact same thing where it's just a card. Yeah, it is a surprisingly sort of simple thing to do in the end, unless you have to smooth this, in which case it's the actual worst.
I had something similar like that where I did have to move it. It took forever to get
Yeah, it's awful. I had to do that with like a jukebox for one of my projects when I was in school, and it was like 5 grates, and it was like hell on earth. It was terrible. All right, cool. We have renders. I love this TIFF hack. It is my favorite thing. All right, cool. So Mike, do you want to give us a quick rundown on the space you're making and what objects are yours?
So our theme was Victorian style, like office space kind of.
Cool.
Everything in these renders was my objects.
Nice.
So like the grandfather clock is like hero object, bookcases like furniture, and then the chandelier is the big one.
Gotcha. I am a fan of. It seems like there's like maybe some issues with sampling and resolution in the wallpaper.
Yeah.
I can show you, actually, I have like a really silly, like stupid wallpaper hack if you're looking to make foiled wallpaper with like shiny bits in it, if you're interested. But the stained glass window is really cool looking. Like, that is a cool effect.
Is there a way that I can get the light to shine through to like cast the colors of the window, or no?
There totally should be. Did you put your Maya files in here? Just like,
No, I didn't.
okay. No worries. I'm fairly certain I didn't actually ask for them, so that's fine. But yeah, so let me set up a really sketchy stained glass window really quick. Full disclosure, this is going to look incredibly bad. You know what? Let me just put a UV checker texture on this. Ha 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 ha. So how did you make your window for the existing one?
It's got like a transparency map on it, and then, or no, not transparency map. It's like semi-transparent, but it's got a diffuse map on it.
Okay. So what you'd probably want to do is go through and I'm just gonna throw a random. Basically, you just I would map that into transmission tint. So if you turn transmission all the way up, let me just throw an area light in here and make sure that something will actually render when I do this. All right. Clearly, I need to turn my light density up a lot. All right. What about like 10? Great. So imagine that this is my stained glass window. But I'm just gonna So. Okay, throw a standard surface shader on here, turn transmission weight all the way up. It's kind of doing something. Don't forget you need to take your little shape node and under the Arnold tab in the attribute editor, turn off opaque. Theoretically, that should then cast a shadow. In this case, if I move it closer to the ground, okay, it's not doing anything terribly interesting with shadows, whatever. But what you should be able to do, so for transmission weight, like if I change this to be blue or whatever weird color, that's going to tint the glass itself, and then whatever light that shines through that should also be that color. So if I went in and you could basically, it looks like just take your existing texture that you have and basically just plug that into, instead of using the diffuse weight, use transmission weight.
Okay.
And that should do something, ooh, God, why is that still here? Like this.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah. And then you would just want to make a weight map. So like you have those little lead bars between the colors.
Yeah.
So you would just want to, if you have, is it like a Photoshop texture you made?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, just grab those wire bars, and you're also going to want to make a weight for the transmission weight so that, the bars aren't clear. But yeah, that's pretty much like instant stained glass window in Arnold. That should look really cool too, like once you get those like crazy light color shining through, like that would be a really interesting lighting thing. And then what material is the lamp supposed to be?
Yeah, I want to go back and fix it because it's not as transparent as I want it to be.
Okay.
There's like a displacement map on it and then bump and then a transparency map because it's supposed to be like kind of transparent but like still like I want it to look like it's kind of painted.
Right.
The light to still shine through. So.
Wait, not shopping. To me right now, it looks like maybe something sort of ceramic in nature, and of course I can't find images. Wait. But yeah, so I think you can, with that, were you going for something kind of like this?
Kind of, yeah.
Okay. I mean, this is a ceramic lithophane. If you want to do ceramics, you might need subsurface scattering, but I'd just say for that.
Okay.
It's going to bump your render times up crazy a lot. But yeah, so for that, what you could do is maybe also play with like transmission weight a little bit.
Okay.
The other thing that you could consider is if you had, if these little dome things were double-sided, if they had an inside, what you could do is make basically a separate map for the outside and the inside. So maybe the inside was like super transparent, and then the outside had a little bit less transparency to it, so that it would make sort of that interesting, sort of almost dimensional look, like where if you look at this, you can kind of see like the thicker areas, the light's not shining through, but like this it is a little bit more.
Yeah.
So you can play with like different weight maps for that. If you're doing glass or ceramics, usually, me personally, I'll play with transmission more so than like the opacity for cards, which is what it sounds like from your description you were doing, maybe. But yeah, I mean, I think the overall texture and stuff is pretty neat. I think just try to refine like how the light comes through that, and I think it would be like a really interesting.
Yeah. Because
Interesting
right
thing.
Now, it's not really. I just keep making the lights inside more intense, but it's not
Yeah.
lighting up the scene. It's just.
Oh
Like,
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
And then the light becomes overexposed, but it's not lighting up the room, so it's frustrating.
Yeah, no, that kind of stuff. So one thing you can do is, I know at some point I went over light linking. Did I go through it with your class?
I think
At
so.
some point? Okay. So a lot of times, if you're doing, especially like with a mesh light, if you turn it up and then the exposure gets really bright, it's barely lighting up your room, but your object itself is like crazy overexposed.
Yeah.
What you could do in that case is go through and basically make two lights. One light that creates the whatever nice effect that you want on the inside of your light, and then make another light that is going to actually illuminate the rest of your scene, but set up the light linking in a way where it's not affecting this light, or else it's still going to be blown out.
Okay.
So again, you'd have like one dim light in here just for like the pretties, and then one light that doesn't affect this at all, that's just like doing things to the rest of the space. That's probably the easiest, albeit kind of convoluted way to do that, short of just like texturing stuff. You could also, conceivably, just turn part of this into a mesh light. Maybe that would help. I've never tried to do like a mesh light where you map intensity based on UV. I don't see why it shouldn't work, but that way you wouldn't even need to worry about the light inside at all. Usually though, mesh lights still tend to kind of blow out, so you'd have to do, you'd have to basically show the original mesh and then like mess with the texture on it. But there's a few different ways to do that. If you're still having issues with it, you're welcome to shoot me an email and I can troubleshoot with the actual live file, but yeah. Cool. But yeah, so anybody else have any thoughts or comments on the space? Like things they like, things that they think could be improved? I do think there is a very nice sort of like overall feel to the space where it feels like all the stuff is like very unified and eclectic in a sort of like old way. But it does look nice. Like especially like with the addition of the lamp and the stained glass window and like the texturing on the walls, something about all that like really kind of brings the scene together for me.
I also like the old pictures, like the
Yeah,
you see
yeah,
on
yeah.
the frames, like, it
These
brings
guys.
this out really well.
Is this a random Lambert frame that got like unhidden or something?
Oh, I don't know. I think maybe the texture got messed up, but there was a texture on that.
Gotcha. I do that all the time. I keep like 7 duplicates of my objects in the scene, and then I'll just like accidentally export them and like render them in like weird places. I'm like, ah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so were you looking for any like other objects? What other objects are going into the scene from your teammates?
There's gonna be like a couch and like I think some maybe like marble statues.
Yeah, that's mine.
Yeah.
And like a little
Gotcha.
on the table.
Cool.
For me, I want to model like a ton of books and stuff to put on the shelf though. And,
Yeah. Like in this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'd be neat.
I've
Mhm.
got a list of smaller things I'm gonna model to like fill the scene up more.
Yeah. I was gonna suggest some like wall stuff maybe.
Yeah.
Another thing you might also consider is making like a little vase of like poly paint flowers. Just make like less horrific textures for them.
Yeah.
But honestly, like if you go on textures.com or just like any internet thing, you can pretty much find like ready-made textures of random flowers, and you can just slap that on and call it a day. But yeah, no, I mean it sounds like you have have a solid foundation, and like seems like you have a solid plan to like keep going with stuff. So cool. And I think my only, I guess, real comment might be it's a little bit hard. Might just be the render. I mean, this one's like obviously night. No, never mind. I retract my statements. I was gonna say it's kind of hard to tell the difference. I just haven't been scrolling quite far enough. I really like this daylight lighting actually. Like the way that it highlights the details in the cabinet looks really nice, and you can also see like little like speckly bits. It looks like there might be some like a little bit of weird sampling issues happening, or it's just a really rusty grate.
Yeah, there is a rust texture on the grate.
Okay. Yeah, so that might just be okay. Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah.
Oh, I do have a question, just out of curiosity. The one tutorial we gave on like the ambient occlusion, how long did that take to render out the?
I think that one might have taken anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not like the fastest thing on the planet to do. Granted, I was on my laptop, which is not terribly fast to begin with. But yeah, anytime you bake textures, it usually takes a while.
Okay.
Especially if you're doing, you can bake like full textures or like full lit textures out. That takes forever on my laptop. But yeah. There's also, the other thing that you could conceivably do is just, and you can do this like for, you know, pretty much any of the renders, is render out like your image like this, and then just do a whole separate pass that's just ambient occlusion, like render the image with ambient occlusion, and then composite it on in Photoshop. It'll give you a lot of control over, you know, you can like mask out certain areas if it's too intense, play with opacity, that kind of stuff, so it's not like permanently baked into your render. So that's one thing you can also do to just like add a little bit of extra pop to your renders. Usually AO passes don't take a terribly long time to render, if it's just like a still image, usually. But yeah, and then I think the only other comment that I would really have is maybe fiddle with the wallpaper texture, because it is hovering on too low res.
It's really low res.
Yeah, it's yeah. So there's like a billion of these textures online. You can probably just like find one that looks pretty much the same. But yeah, cool. Any other thoughts, questions, comments before we move on? All right. I am so excited about this TIFF thing. I'm gonna keep saying it because it's amazing. All right, and I've been deleting. Aha. Eh. Have you extracted the thing? You have. Beautiful. Nope. I forgot to paste in my TIFF. I don't know why this works, but whatever, I'll take it. All right, cool. So do you want to give us a brief rundown of what the space is in the objects that you made in it?
So our space is like especially a basement in like the 20s or 30s of this war vet from World War I. So it's kind of like a
Nice.
The only things I didn't count here were the gramophone and the master deck.
Cool.
So like I have a radio in the corner over there that I had so many issues with. I spent like 5 hours procedurally texturing this thing.
Oh my god.
I won't lie, it looked great. And then I brought it into the scene and all of my textures were just gone. And it wasn't
No.
just like my textures, it was like everything I had done
Wow.
was just gone. So
That sucks.
I cried at 9 a.m.
Oh.
and then realized I just needed to submit it and I would come back to it because I was just not in the mindset to do
Yes.
anything.
That sounds like a very sane and rational approach to that.
Still,
Keep having issues with lighting.
Mm-hmm.
Like the outside lighting, I just can't get it to come in for some reason.
Okay.
And,
All right. So where is your outside lighting coming from?
we have like 2 windows.
Okay, like this thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there are like 2 lights right outside of it.
Gotcha.
They just don't come inside.
Is there glass in the windows?
No.
Okay, so it's literally just like a hole in the wall and nothing's.
Yeah, I had glass there and then it wasn't coming in. I was like, oh, it's because I have glass here.
That's weird.
Obviously.
What kind of light is it?
It's just an area light.
That's weird.
Yeah.
If you, I mean, I could take a look if I had your MI file. If you want to send that to me, I can take a look at that because that seems like, it seems like it's probably just either a stupid Maya glitch or it's just like a weird, like one silly setting somewhere that's like not
Yeah.
checked or something. But yeah, I can totally take a look at that if you want to send that to me. Excuse me. And then final question about the room. Is it, I assume this is like someone later found the 20s man cave war vet space and it's not like in use currently?
I don't know. I think it was like in use currently.
Okay.
A lot of things that are like, I don't know. That just seems weirdly clean for
Fair,
being
fair.
found later.
No, that's fair. I was mostly asking because of the like the texture on like the bottles and stuff, but yeah, cool. All right, so yeah, anyone have any initial like thoughts, comments, questions on any stuff that they like, don't like? That I'm just gonna say the bottles in the back here, like the texture that you put on them, is a super nice touch. Like my parents have a bunch of bottles like this, and I always would steal them before they could throw them out because I'm like, no, they're pretty. But yeah, that's like totally a cool thing. If you ever wanted to create more variation just within the bottles, you could change the tint of the glass color and make them different colors. Again, completely up to you and your aesthetic. Just throwing random ideas out there. From this angle, this totally looks like a weird, like, shiny broomstick to me. I don't know why. But yeah, I mean, I think let me see, so which renders are your day lighting and the night lighting?
Are there only 3 there?
I think there was only like 4 of them. Yeah, there's only 4.
Okay. I think this one was supposed to be night lighting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a follow-up question. I assume that it would end up looking different if there were lights coming through the windows, obviously. So that's fair.
I would hope so, but apparently not.
That is fair. All right. Yeah. So I mean, my thought was, again, pending seeing what happens once the lights from the windows are actually functional. One thing you might consider doing, like for the night lighting, is imagine that this is a really cool render angle. But like maybe imagining like not all the lights are on, like he's kind of like prepping the space for sleep. In case, just again, that's in case the day and the night looks too similar, you could turn off a few more lights, just to sort of like simulate the darkerness things. But I do like how you've sort of gone in and like played with environmental fog. It definitely gives it a sort of like dank and dusty feel to it. The bottles are certainly cool. Were the pipes in the background also you?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, they look cool.
We both did. There's only one other person in my group.
Okay.
So that's like our main issue is that it's like we didn't realize that we wouldn't have enough objects.
Right. I mean, strictly speaking, like I was gonna say, actually, if you're feeling like your space isn't quite populated enough, you could always just sort of condense it down into a smaller area and just like shrink your room.
Yeah. That was my idea, and then I talked to Lucas, and he goes, "Or we could just make more stuff." I was like,
That 100% sounds like something I would say. But yeah, so I mean, like, shrinking your walls would probably take like negligible effort even to modify the UVs and stuff. And you could sort of shift your lights around. But yeah, I mean, what are the other objects that are supposed to go in the scene eventually? Or was it, I guess it was just you. Okay, yeah, so never mind. But yeah, so I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm like, maybe there could be like a little bed somewhere.
Yeah, we have a bed in the corner. I just didn't take a picture of that side.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
You could also sort of convert the space if you wanted to and make it less like a single man cave and more like tiny bunker for like a few dudes hiding out. So you could sort of like cheat it and be like, okay, we have a bed. What if there's like 3 people living here and there's like more beds? And then you could add like little storage chests by the foot of each bed to give it some space. Maybe they have like a picture or something of like their loved ones that are like away from them from the war. And like that would be a good way to sort of add some additional variation and fill in space. Kind of like quick and dirty if you need to. But yeah, I mean, I think like overall the render angles and stuff are really interesting. They do a good job showing off of the models. Watch out for there's like a little bit of UV stretching on the plates here.
Yeah, I saw
Is this just like one of those weird like metal with like a pattern on it plates?
it. It was like a tile, and then I just shrunk it down and thought maybe it looked like a plate from afar, and then I decided to render up close.
Also sounds like a thing that I would do. Yeah, I do. I buy this one as a plate texture. There's a very...
That one is just not a plate.
It looks a little too picnicky, I think.
Yeah.
Like this looks like something maybe a little bit more elegant, and this is just like a picnic table. But it might be interesting to see a little bit more color in the scene, even if it is like muted color. Because I think like, yeah, I'm not saying like go crazy rainbow with it, but like you have the pop of like the radio, and then I think the stuff that ends up standing out the most in these renders is like the stuff like this little bit of like copper from the gramophone and like the way the light catches it, the orange from the light, and then also like the little highlights on the bottles. But if there was like, again, a little bit of like color, even if it's muted color, just like somewhere in the background, that kind of stuff is gonna like really draw the eye and kind of like pick up attention and focus. So you could use that to your advantage depending, like, again, the radio is like easily most saturated thing in the scene, like first thing my eyes goes to. So there are like totally other ways that you can, again, just like, you could use that to your advantage if you wanted to, is what I'm getting at there. But yeah, I mean, I think overall this looks really cool. I'm excited to see where you keep going with it. Any other thoughts, questions, concerns, etc.? Cool. I am so excited that I can use not Photoshop. Cool. Yes, good. Aha. All right, cool. All right, so do you want to, Triforces. So do you want to give us a quick rundown of what the space is and what objects that you made for the scene?
So this is also the game room.
Cool.
I made basically everything in there. I didn't put in anything new yet. So I made the chair. There's like soda cans, which are we allowed to share the extra things we make to populate?
I don't hate. I mean, I'd say don't share everything, but if you guys are both making the same soda can, then if you've already made it, then sure. Yeah.
So like populate. I made like the shirts for the.
Oh, like the floor shirts?
Yeah, like so like if you go to the dresser, like
Oh,
the
yeah.
shirts in there, and
Okay.
the shirts hanging on.
Did you? Yeah. I remember you asking how was the process of getting the like shirts draped and stuff. Was that reasonable?
Yeah, the only issue is that then when I tried to like extrude to give it like
Thickness.
the thickness,
Yeah.
it would like clip through and not look great.
Gotcha.
So,
I mean, if it's not inherently obvious from the scene, so I don't know if there's thickness in this or not, but as long as you're not zooming up to it and showing the edge, probably won't see it. I'm also, and I'll mention this later, I'm not asking for your Maya files for the final, I only want renders. So I will not be able to check these things unless it's super obvious from your renders that like.
Hypothetically, there could be end dots and you'll just never know.
Hypothetically, one may say this. I feel like as a snarky thing, someone is just gonna like rip their entire wall to shreds and make it all N-gons, and I will never know. Which reminds me of another weird tangent, and then we'll get back to this. But if you guys ever want to put like silly like joke things in your projects, like inside jokes or like making fun of the project, whatever, I'm all for that as long as you're not being like, I don't know, super crazy like racist weird or something like that. But like other than that, I really don't care. I put a hammer in my animation 2 final, which I showed in frame for a solid few frames, that literally just said, fuck this assignment. Nobody noticed. So if you guys want to do like weird stuff like that or whatever, again, I think it's kind of funny. Just be aware that obviously if you do something super profane like that, like Drexel is not going to show that. Even if your project is awesome, they're not going to show something with like expletives written all over it on their portfolio pages. It's also not something you'd want to send to employers, so you might need to modify them for later use. But if you don't care or that's fine with you, you're welcome to do weird stuff in your projects. As long as it looks reasonable, totally fine by me. Yeah, like I would probably totally put like a bunch of weird snarky stuff on the shirts just to be a crazy person, but that's just me. But yeah, so I guess were there any other like questions or like issues you were having with the scene, or? Cool. It seems like you have like a very clear differentiation between the day and night lighting. Like completely different color schemes, but I think both of them work pretty well. Anyone else have any other like thoughts or comments on lighting, models, anything else? Cool. I don't know what it is. There's something really satisfying about like the door in the background of the one render. Like something about this particular render I find very like aesthetically appealing, even though there's not like a whole lot of stuff going on. Like it highlights the chair really nicely, and then it just sort of is like, there's just like a nice door in the background. It's like a well-made little door. Doors and faucets are kind of like my weird like obsessive things. I'm like, doors and faucets. But yeah, I mean, like I think overall the scene looks pretty nice. It seems like the distribution of objects makes sense. A thing I might say, so like for some of, are you doing this in Maya or Unity or? Okay, nice. Have you also been having the weird rendering issues for like Octane's like licensing issues, or?
I just didn't exactly know what I was doing, and then I just started playing with the lights.
Fair. Yeah, so I think my only thought for the daylight lighting is it might be nice. It seems like, I think the color temperature looks really good. To me, it looks a little bit flat to an extent. Like, when I say I mostly mean like I would expect to see maybe on the chair like a few more specular highlights or something hanging out somewhere, because you do have like a really interesting shadow pattern here, which I think is really cool. I just don't necessarily get the sense that there's like light coming in from that window per se. And honestly, that could just be because there's sort of gray behind the window. Like as soon as you put a texture in, it might completely get rid of that issue. One silly hacky thing you can do if you want is make God rays with cards in Unity if you're looking for like light beams. Just make like weird cards for them. Again, if you don't want to do that, fine, I'm just throwing out weird ideas. But yeah, I feel like there maybe could be some more stuff on the floor almost. Because like clearly there's just like pockets of very targeted mess, like messy cans, messy shirts, and then it just sort of like stops around the desk. So you might maybe look into other things to potentially populate the floor with, maybe. That honestly could just be like maybe more soda cans, more shirts. I'm thinking like a spilled thing of pens. If it were me and I was a gamer, I'd probably just like leave a giant stack of like games on the floor that would have like fallen over because I'm crazy and my cat would have knocked them over in like 5 seconds. But yeah, I mean, like I think overall, like I do like the lighting. I like the drastic difference between the day and night lighting. And I think for night lighting, it might just be because like I kind of want to see like one shot. I think this would be the shot. Maybe like where exactly are the light sources for this, or like what are they supposed to be? I guess.
So like, there's two lights on like the wall.
Like up here.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah. So this guy. And have they sort of converted to purple for night, or is that just coming from something else?
No. Might be in one of the pictures. You see that like triangle up there?
Oh yeah.
There's like
Gotcha.
right there.
All right. Yeah, so I feel like for that it might be good to. I like the modeled texture you have on this, but I think for these it might be nice to see maybe kind of like that door shot where I was like, this is really nice. Maybe kind of reverse that so you're looking in from the door and you actually see them in the frame. Because I think for me, I'm looking at like night lighting. All the computers have like crazy lights nowadays, so it's like totally believable. But I kind of want to see like where that purple is coming from. And I think I'm also looking at this, and it seems maybe a little weird if it looks like the sides of this are sort of like solid black plastic and not see-through, and the most light's coming out of the front. I could be wrong. What?
That's how it is.
It is? Or no, sorry, no. I meant I could be wrong about the next bit I'm about to say. This actually, you can totally 3D print these if you wanted to with transparent filament. But anyway, but I'm looking at some. These don't seem like the kind of thing that would usually light up a room this intensely. And not maybe this close to the wall, if that makes sense. Because if the light is starting maybe 4 or 5 inches out from the wall, if these are like thick, I wouldn't expect the lighting to come down quite this aggressively and quite this far, like close to the wall, like down here, if that makes sense. And then for this particular render, I think something about the lighting, like the lighting color seems more similar to this pinky guy up here. So again, in this render, since I do see this like blue light, it creates for me at least a little bit of a disconnect between the light color that's being shown and like the light being generated. It's on the projector, it looks way different than on my computer. This one is like much more periwinkle, but yeah, so I think that might be something to maybe look into. But also like once you get, you could totally like tweak it. Like once you get computer monitors and stuff like that in there, that also could change the entire feel and negate like half the stuff I said. But yeah, so I mean, I just feel like if you're doing trippy lighting, all for trippy weird light colors, just make sure that you have like a very clear planned out way, like sources for those light that are going to make sense to the viewer if they see it in the screen. But yeah, I do think overall the lighting looks pretty cool. Yeah, cool. Any other? I really like this render. Any other thoughts, questions, comments on this? Cool. I feel like some wall posters would be good. Oh, and then there's like one other weird thing. Watch your desk isn't clipping through your through your walls. That's my biggest pet peeve with molding in real life and also in stuff, is it like you can't just put stuff up against a wall. It drives me nuts. Yeah, but I mean, I think you do a good job of like capturing specular highlights and stuff, like the handles here and like the soda cans and stuff. It seems like your specular reflections are like pretty on point for like highlighting interesting details in your scene. Yeah, I did this one. It looks like there's 2 zip files for this one. So I'm just gonna grab both and see what happens. And by both, I mean the first one. Haha. Nope. Alright. Cool. So do you want to give us a brief rundown of what your space is and the objects that you made for it?
So this is my century library / office.
Cool. Gotcha.
And my hero objects are gold, but my other 2 objects are the table and chair.
Cool.
I have some books for decoration. I know I'm going to bookshelf, but I put some out on the desk just to show that
I see you got a bunch of wear into your globe. It's kind of cool. I definitely buy the like chip. To me, it kind of looks like a werewolf attacked it, honestly. But like it definitely gives the effect of like something very aggressive happened to it at this point. But no, I think that's like pretty cool looking weathering. And it's also good. The angle and the lighting that you chose here to sort of show that off does really help to accent the fact that you do have like a nice little bump map on that. It gives a lot more depth and dimension, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, anyone else have any like thoughts or comments on any of the renders that were there? And I will totally call a name if nobody volunteers. All right, going for my weird paper thing. Kyle, hast thou thoughts?
I'm actually, so on that picture, right above where like the yellow is, is that like what's the texture on that? Is that supposed to be like I don't know what they're called, like popcorn balls? Like.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so that's not a notice. I actually did that along with the bump map I found the other wall. I just copied it onto all of the walls, but just changed the bottom portion.
Gotcha.
What effect were you going for that?
I wasn't really sure. I was just experimenting with it. I didn't want to, but I'm thinking of taking it out because it's like too much.
Fair. I might, if not take it out, I think the bump map might be a little extreme in and of itself. So I would, if you bumped the bump depth down like way lower, I think that it might provide an interesting bit of texture. But I do kind of think that like as is, it might be a little bit. It's kind of like strong and distracting from some of the other stuff that you have in the scene. Like you do have this really like nice detail and stuff modeled into the chair.
I was gonna say the textures on
Yeah.
the like actual objects are like really good. So I felt like it kind of redirected my eyes towards that, and I was like, what is that? So
Yeah.
I feel like if you get rid of that, because you have amazing textures on your objects. So.
Mm-hmm. And I also think maybe I really like the textures and stuff in the molding down here. I think again the bump depth might be like a little bit intense. If you take that down, it might kind of pull focus back to your objects. Yeah, cool, good point. Yeah, but I mean, I think I like that you actually went in and like modeled the scrolls and stuff for this. I think that like came across pretty well. My one weird thing, it's not necessarily specific to this chair, just like in general. In case you guys haven't figured out from like previous commentary on stuff, I'm like weirdly obsessive. Like if you put wooden objects in your scene, I get really obsessed with like looking at the wood grain on those objects and seeing if it's going the right direction. So I mean in this case, I do notice a little bit of a UV seam here. Depending on how your object is made, it seems like that would be like a fairly straightforward fix. Maybe just like kind of cut it right here and seam this back together so the wood's going in the right direction. For something like this arm of the chair, so these are usually carved out of like, and honestly texturing this kind of stuff is like always a colossal pain. But usually this is like starts out as one piece of wood or maybe like a piece of wood with another like little chunk of wood that's sort of glued on for the arm before it's carved, if that makes sense. And so it's not like here the grain of the wood sort of curves a little bit. I do like how you have this sort of wood grain in here, but yeah, so like that area might be worth looking into. If you're gonna look at your object from like farther, like from this angle, it's nowhere near as noticeable. If you're zooming up really close, so I'm just like staring at the back of your chair, and it's like as a focal point, you might consider like fiddling with it a little bit. There is, and I don't necessarily recommend using these, but there does exist within Maya 3D textures. They usually, in my experience, take kind of a lot-ish of tweaking to make look not terrible, which is why I haven't super gone over them. But like into color, so they do have one for wood, which is why I'm saying this. So if you click on just 3D textures for this, again, they have, I'll just show you the marble one really quick. These don't, sometimes these show up in the viewport, sometimes they don't. But this texture, again, they have one for wood, I'll show you that in a second. But you'll notice that like as I move my object, the texture on it is changing. So if you ever use these and you want to not have that happen, just grab the texture and just parent it under the sphere. That way, if you move the sphere, the texture will stay consistent. But basically, what this sort of replicates is, in this case, if it's a sphere, you know, you have a chunk of marble and you have carved the sphere out of it. So basically, like, no matter how I rotate the sphere, it's going to sort of basically like punch a different pattern in depending on where it is in space within that 3D texture, if that makes any sense. So I'm just gonna delete that real quick. What? Might have just discovered a weird thing. Okay, no, apparently not. So again, they also have these for wood, but it can be a good way to sort of replicate stuff depending on the shape you're trying to make. I did, like, if you're doing like a bust of a head or something that's supposed to be carved out of marble, wood always looks horrible in the viewport. But it can be a good way to do sort of weird irregular shapes like that, or in this case, like for your handle. It might not be a bad solution for that. The caveat being, it should look, wait for it. You'd have to get it to sort of match the rest of your wood, and for some reason, this is not showing up. That's super weird. Let me try a sketchy thing. I'm not gonna lie, I've actually never super tried to render at least the wood in Arnold, so I'm just like, what happens if I put a, where is it? Lambert on it. I don't expect this to help, but that's super weird. But yeah, so I mean, kind of a weird sketchy demo, but you could try playing with it. There's a few tutorials online about like how to make the textures look less trashy, because they usually look really gross when you first do stuff with them, especially the marble. But like, if you play with the settings enough, they might do what you need them to do, is mostly what I'm getting at there. Kind of like weird, long-winded, but yeah. But yeah, I do really like I open this and I'm like, ooh, carved wooden stuff. Like, that's neat. One thing that you might consider doing is, if there's any way to like rotate the chair or like skim light across the surface of these, that would like really, really help to emphasize all the modeling work that you did on them. Create some really interesting highlights in the scene. But yeah, I mean, it's certainly like a really cool looking chair. And then are these, so I assume this is now your night lighting, yeah? Okay. Sorry, one more time? Yeah. No, that makes sense. I was gonna say, actually, it does kind of make sense because there's like a giant window right here. Like, I would buy that the night lighting is a little bit brighter from that. Are you rendering this with like Maya or Unity or? Arnold, cool. Oh yeah, I guess you're doing high poly, so that makes sense. But yeah, one thing you actually might consider doing is, depending on the source of the light at night, this would make a really interesting shadow somewhere if a light was shining behind it. It might be like, if you happen to have a ray of light shining through at any point, it might be interesting to like try shifting the chair in front of that, if that makes sense for your scene, because you would get, again, like really interesting shadows and stuff from these punch outs, which would again kind of help to accentuate the fact that like, hey, I modeled in all of these little squiggles into the wood. I think the daylighting, especially for this desk, looks really nice. Wait, is the desk and the chair, were they both in this corner? Yeah. Okay. Ah, this makes sense. Okay, yeah. I think maybe for the desk, I would take down the bump map again, like ever so slightly for this. Mostly just like this one piece. I think the rest of it looks pretty reasonable. Especially like, again, when you sort of skim across the surface, you get, you really kind of see that bump map, and it does look pretty nice, but yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think overall, like, these look pretty nice. Anyone else? And again, I really like this render with the globe. I think this is like a good example of an interesting render angle where like you see all of the objects, but it's also just like a very clear sort of like foreground, middle ground, background. But yeah, cool. Anyone else have any thoughts, questions, comments before we continue on? Alrighty then. Cute. Also, did I get all your renders? Because there was 2 zip files for that one. For last one. It's all good. I have done far weirder when submitting assignments, so you are all good. Where? Oh yeah. Ah. Ha. Tiff hack. All right, cool. So do you want to give us ooh. If that's velvet, that like
Yeah.
looks pretty cool. I always hate doing stuff like that.
Also, it's kind of floating right now, but I fixed that after the render, unfortunately.
As long as it's fixed by the time of the final.
It is.
But yeah, so you want to give us a brief rundown of your space and the objects that you made?
Yeah. So it's supposed to be like an American Bible library / office, so 1800s-ish.
Cool.
So I've got this sort of sideboard table-y thing, and the podium that the sculpture fits on top of, which is like that kind of set.
Yeah.
Which is not in this.
Right.
Because it's just objects. But it's pretty straightforward. Everything's made out of dark wood because it's old and 1800s-y.
Right.
But yeah, not really too much. Are there any specific questions?
Cool. And this is low poly? High poly?
Guess. I mean, I'm not sure what your definition
Um,
of low or high really is. It's like
I mean,
Ben Franklin's had like 260,000 polys, and this is like
Jeez.
100.
so when I say low poly, I mean designed to be viewed unsmoothed. So if you're pressing the 3 key to view your stuff, I would qualify that as like high poly, even if it's not.
Guess, yeah.
Okay.
But
Cool. All right, yeah. So the reason I ask is because the certain areas of the desk, mostly like these little cutouts, look really sharp. But now that I look at them again, I think that everything else is smooth. So I think it was just looking at that and I was like, it looks like poly lines.
Yeah, and the original object that I modeled that off of, those are actually like people, like really detailed people. I decided not to end up doing that
A solid decision.
because Ben Franklin's head was enough.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, honestly, that would be a thing where you could totally sculpt that in ZBrush, but yeah, I mean, I think that would be a
I'm
little
not
excessive.
wonderful sculptor, so that ended up being a square.
I can't sculpt from like a cube to save my life, so I, again, respect that decision. Also, I'm just gonna throw it out there. This totally looks like a face.
Oh yeah.
It looks like a weird little like happy koala face or something.
Yeah, there are supposed to be sort of not really gold, but metallic medallions in them. I'm thinking about adding it. I couldn't get it to work well last night when I was trying to.
Okay, so like,
finish this up.
I think I know. Do you have your reference images anywhere or
I
no?
don't think they're in this file.
All right, no worries.
Show you.
I think I know what you mean. Where it will
Yeah.
just be like little gold leafy like
Yeah,
cab
something
things
like
with. Yeah, I think that'd be cool if you can get them to work. I think that'd be really neat to throw in there.
They looked pretty iffy the first time I put them in, but I was thinking about maybe just going in and making them sort of more of a wood inlay than the actual gold, because the color was really the problem. It looked very strange.
Gotcha. I mean, that is also the kind of thing where like you could potentially just use like a copper or gold preset and like tweak
Yeah.
it a little bit. And then if you wanted to make it look a little bit weathered, that would actually be a great candidate for procedural texturing. They also have, throw it out there, they do have some of these random ornaments that you can just sort of download, and these are OBJs, and strictly speaking, if they're like your main objects, you should probably make them yourself, but if you guys ever need these for like background things and you need them to be mesh, they do have these. They also have a bunch of other, not ornaments, but like little brushes and stuff that you can use. These would be like, these guys are for like sculpting detail in ZBrush and stuff if you want to do like a normal or displacement map. So these guys are really handy, and if you can also make them yourself if you ever need custom designs. But that might be something worth looking into. But yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you did a pretty good job on the velvet texture. Like, honestly, that's the kind of thing that I always dread texturing, and like especially like on this, it looks maybe a little bit sampley right here.
Yeah. I had to bump down the sample on these. It was like 4. I pushed it down to like 3.
Gotcha.
But that was just a time constraint, really.
Fair.
For the final renders, I'm going to definitely bump it up a lot more.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I think like especially this edge and stuff, like you did a good job of making it look textured and like getting that like sort of speckly, irregular highlights on it. I would just watch out a little bit of texture stretching down here.
Yeah, that part goes into the top anyway when it's
Cool.
not floating. So that type of thing, you don't see it.
Fair enough. Yeah, and then for this thing, I think this will be one of those, like, maybe watch the direction of the wood grain, because it seems like it's running the opposite direction that it should.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out. I guess that probably should be vertical. I can flip it around pretty easily.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
A lot of times these are made, well, I mean, there's different ways to make these. I have seen this kind of thing made where they'll actually take 4 pieces of like maybe 2-inch thick lumber and glue them together so the inside is actually hollow,
Yeah.
and it saves on wood rather than just doing a solid chunk of wood. So you could potentially like pay attention to the seams in that and kind of do that. Yeah. I don't know. I watch a lot of like weird videos about CNC routering this kind of stuff because it's interesting. But yeah, I mean, I think like the model itself is pretty cool. I might focus, and this goes for the desk, I think, as well. But maybe focus on getting a little bit. So like this one, you can barely see the wood grain. I can see it a little bit under here, but it seems maybe a little bit too dark.
Yeah.
And then I would focus on getting a little bit of variation, like a very, very slight bump map in there. Because even if you have polished wood, there's usually like some small knots in it that would show up like if you shine a light across it. And since you do have that kind of like shining light across effect right here, it would bring out that detail. And again, maybe like a very slight roughness map would also help to accentuate that.
Okay.
But I think the overall look and feel of the objects you made definitely feel unified. I'm still really liking that leather texture, or the velvet. And then I guess this is the night lighting.
Yeah.
The walls are really shiny, but I assume that'll be fixed eventually. Yeah. So, yeah, that's fair. I do actually, like, speaking of shiny, I do actually really like the shiny on the floor. So I have no idea what you have planned for that, but that is kind of an interesting effect that you could play with if it was like a fancy marble floor or something like that.
My reference images for a room had a carpeted floor, but I'm thinking it might be easier to use some sort of marbly type tile.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that really fits with the time period. I'll look and see if I can find something.
Yeah, I mean, you can also tweak it a little bit, like,
Yeah.
yeah. It's not like you're being paid to perfectly replicate a space, so as long as it, like, kind of, like, looks cohesive, then I would say go for it. And honestly, like, for this, you get, like, very, like, fancy, expensive busts and plinths and stuff. I would totally buy that there would be some, like, weird marble flooring going on.
That definitely makes sense.
But yeah, so I think, and again, like, it looks like you have some interesting sort of shadows back here. I think this maybe falls, if you could find a way to maybe accentuate the desk a little bit more on the night lighting. Because right now the focus is like these 2 legs, I think, in the scene right here, and the lights. And then this falls, I think, maybe a little bit too much into blackness.
Okay.
Which could just be something where if are there windows like on the opposite wall from this?
Yeah, the pedestal's to the left of this, and there's
Yeah.
windows on either side. And then other than that, I mean, there's various lights scattered around for like light type effects. But,
Right.
And then the lights, the lamps, but they don't really do too much.
Yeah.
I was thinking I could open like a skylight up in the ceiling.
A lot of old houses do have those.
Yeah. It seemed like there was kind of room for one. There is an arch in there.
Yeah.
That
That'd
would
be
help
interesting.
the other side of the room.
I don't know how much light that would light in for now. I was going to suggest if there's a window, you could maybe shine a light sort of like through it and like have it fall across your desk or something. But yeah. But no, I mean, I think, or you put a fireplace in and have like a really orange light coming.
That would be interesting.
Anyway, also just kind of no idea. It just seems like it would fit with the space. But yeah, and then this might be another candidate for maybe turn this off in the render and then like sub in a different background. There's like a very yellow field.
Yeah, I had to bump up the exposure on that because I'm a little low on lights.
Yeah.
For the daylight renders. For the night light, there's a bunch of small lights
Mhm.
around, even though it is a bit dark.
Yeah.
But right now, it's basically just the
Right.
shadow.
You could also play it with, if you've not bumped global illumination up, that also does tend to lighten things a lot. especially like if you're having issues with like corners falling into shadow during daylight lighting and stuff. That'll usually fix that to a certain extent. Also, it'll bump up your render time, but it'll also save you a bunch of time with lighting. So kind of just trade off of what you want to do.
Okay.
But yeah, anyone else have any thoughts or comments on these objects? And or the lighting? All right. On to the next one, as they say. Is there a thing where people just say, like, on to the next one? Because I feel like that's stuck in my head from something, and I just, like, don't know what it's from. Which is weird. I don't know. All right. Diffs. All right, cool. Yeah, so do you want to give us a quick rundown of what your scene is and the objects that you made for it?
It's supposed to be a train station, like in the Wild West, and
Cool.
I made some windows, some benches, and then the register and the signs.
Cool. All right. So, and did you have any like questions or concerns or like things you want to look specifically for crit, or just kind of random feedback? Cool. All right. So, anybody have any? Shoot.
It's too clean to be a train station. Gotta dirty it up like a lot. Because if it's a train station, a lot of people pass through there, and it's probably like not brand new. So there's gonna be a lot of scratches, smudges, grime. I don't know, chip paint. So and probably a door. Cause I think is that just a void?
Is that what?
Just a void. Right
No, that's
there?
a door with a handle.
That's a door.
Wait, this thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
It has none.
Well, that's questionable. You guys are welcome to just yell out if you have stuff.
Yeah, so like, I don't think I have a reply. Can I get that photo of you? With
The wanted post.
maybe.
But yeah, so I mean, I think anyone else have any thoughts or comments?
I feel like the painted part should be a little bit more shinier.
Which part?
Like the green, the wall.
This bit.
Yeah, this
Mhm.
part, the green and the red.
Gotcha.
It should be a little bit more shinier. At least parts of it should be shiny.
I can see that if it's painted. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think the first thing that I would do to this scene would just be to tweak the wall textures and like the floor textures, and just make them like it's really obvious where these are tiling. So that probably would be like the first thing I do, which honestly might be kind of is. You might just want to find a new texture. I mean, this one has like a lot of baked in lighting into it where it's like very dark here and then like very light here. But at a minimum, I would say maybe cut off like these 3 boards here. And then it would still continue to tile. You just wouldn't have like such an aggressive dark line right where they're meeting each other. And the fact that, I mean, it looks like you've sort of reversed the direction of it, but it looks like the same texture for all of the wooden parts, just sort of like recolored. That kind of accentuates the tiling bit. But yeah, and then, so what are the sources of lighting for your scene?
They're coming from the windows.
Okay, so windows are the only thing for daylight, and then the night light is also just windows, or are there any lights inside?
I just did windows right now.
Okay. And then, is there any plans? What are your plans for the windows? Because right now they're just sort of like a red color. Like, are they glass, or is there like some kind of curtain or something?
Not entirely sure yet.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I mean that might be something to think about. At least, and you could do the thing again where if it's just sort of Maya void in the background, or you have like an HDR that you don't want to show, just turn it off. Then you could comp in whatever makes sense into the background. But yeah, and then I think the other stuff that I would look at, I like this sign up here. It has a nice feel to it. I think I totally agree with Sano, where like I feel like there could be some more dirt and grime in the space, especially for like old Western look. And I think one thing, so just like in general, if you're looking for, especially like a place where it's like a heavily used like public space, think of like where, in terms of where you want to add grime, like where are people going most frequently. So in this case, like there's this ticket office here. There's probably going to be a lot of wear from like people throwing stuff here and like, you know, resting on there. So it's going to be like a little bit worn down. There might be a little bit of like a worn down dent in the floor where like if the floor at one point was varnished, that's kind of like worn down from like a lot of foot traffic. And one thing that you can actually do for that is literally just like go into like 30th Street Station and watch people in 30th Street Station. No, but like go in, and sometimes in spaces like that where there's like very sort of clear lines of traffic, you can see where like the floors will be dented in. Or a lot of times that'll happen, there's like somewhere on Drexel's campus, I just don't remember where. I might be thinking my high school, but like in my high school we had these awful, super hazardous slate stairs, but there was like a very clear path up the stairs and a very clear path down, and there were literally like divots in the stairs from where people walked. And you see the same thing in roads actually, like if you're driving. Presumably if people are staying in their lanes, and you usually have like a lighter area where the most of the tires are hitting and kind of like rubbing down the asphalt, stuff like that. So that's like one thing where you just sort of like, if you ever just like wander around, just like look out for that stuff, because you can kind of like find a lot of interesting patterns and stuff in roads and walkways just based on areas that are like really heavily used, if that makes sense. But yeah, and I mean, apart from that, I think just kind of keep working. It feels like maybe there could be a few more objects like populating the scene. And I think, I actually didn't notice this before just now. This sign, like, I have no objection to like a no gun sign. I think this one feels maybe a little bit modern for like modern and like overly white for an old Western space, if that makes sense. Honestly, I don't know if I would notice like the graphics. It seems like maybe a weird thing to, I don't know, anytime I see old Western culture portrayed, it's always like, hey, we're like gun-happy gunslingers. But I know nothing about that. Yeah, go for it.
This is another thing about texture thing. For the poster, the other poster, if you want to get a more grand effect, you could just find like some sort of gnarled like parchment texture and just multiply it over. That should add a decent bit of control, especially if it's like square segmented, like showing it was folded a certain way. Being like older paper, it should help that a lot.
No, this is an excellent point. But yeah, I mean, if you can go on the interwebs, and a lot of times I'll use stuff like this. Yeah, and just like multiply this on top, or like there's ones with creases. Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. And like the ones that are actually tanned, like that should help if you were to like multiply over.
Yeah.
Would help a fair bit.
And this one's like actually kind of nice. It has some like creases and stuff in it.
Yeah.
I like this one. But yeah, and I was actually going to say, so you can carry that over where like this is a sort of browner color I might expect, and then carry that over at least into this gun sign, I think, if you wanted to keep that. Yep.
I feel like it would be more natural if you nailed it onto the wall, or like really loosely glued on the wall. Because I feel like back then
framing.
they don't have such a good
Yeah.
posting technology.
I could see that. I mean, I still feel like they would probably have access to like some nails in the back of the thing with like a string or something tied between it to hang it, but it does seem like it makes sense if this is just sort of a presumably not permanent fixture in the space. It does feel like something maybe they would just tack up with a little bit of glue or like some tack pins or something rather than having it on like a wood backing. This I can see being, if this is like, you know, some kind of notice or something like that, I can see that being like on a frame. If you were looking for more stuff to populate the scene with, you could also think of, maybe there's like, for some reason I'm thinking of an umbrella rack, but that seems like silly. Not a rack, but like an umbrella holder. I don't know why. But you could think of like other stuff like train notices. Like if you ever go into train stations, there's always like weird signs up about like policy and like where to go, or like hours, if they had hours, I guess, in the Old West. I don't know. But yeah. Cool. Any other thoughts, comments, questions?
If you want to change the gun sign just a little bit, you can change it probably from a modern handgun to more like a classic revolver. If you kind of want to tweak it just a little bit.
Also a fair point. Cool. Are you, I forget, are you doing this in Unity or Maya?
Right now I just doing Maya.
Gotcha. I was going to say one thing that you could do, no idea how to do this in Unity, but I know how to do it in Maya. What I mentioned before, if you wanted to just, for each render, if you wanted to do an additional one that's like just a black and white ambient occlusion pass, you could go into Photoshop and then multiply that on top. So what that would do is give you a little bit of like built-in, not grime, but like additional shadowing on all the corners and like on the chair, and that would help give it a little bit more, both realistic and like slightly worn space. And that would be, again, a fairly easy way to achieve that, that effect, but yeah, cool. All right, any other thoughts, questions, comments? Cool. Alrighty then, that was extract better. All right. Tell us about your project and the stuff you made.
Yeah, it's supposed to be sort of Western Expansion era train station, and I handled the close sign, the desk, and the host board.
Cool. And you were doing this in Unity?
Yeah, I'm trying to mess around with Octane. Might just switch off to Maya. It depends. Like I finally figured out how to like guide light and color it correctly now. But it's still like has a very like densely like in engine feel to it, and I have a bit of hard time with like harsh shadows.
Right.
Trying to soften that out.
Yeah.
Like how Arnold would.
That's like always my biggest issue on the very like 1.5 times I've tried to do stuff in Unity. It's like, yeah, getting not harsh shadows.
20 seconds, but sometimes it's evident.
Right.
But yeah.
Cool. Apart from that, any like questions or concerns before we go into Grit?
With the desk itself, you can't really see it all.
This guy?
Yeah. So you can see how I set up like a different grain for the pocketed holes.
Yes.
No, it's kind of like the actual like model itself. You see like the separations are the way they're seamed.
Are you talking about like for in here?
Yeah. So or like the actual like divider or space itself. Like yeah, it's like a different grain.
Oh, this?
No.
Wait, sorry.
Like the pocketed sections. So like the actual like wood panels.
In here, like these guys?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
That's fine. One set's vertical, one set's diagonal. Should I take but it's all the same face.
Yeah.
Section out. Should I take the faces of the vertical set and push it back slightly to help with that? Because right now it's just like a singular face UV in the particular one.
Right. I think what I would probably do is go through and usually so when you textured this, did you just sort of like orient the UVs according to like a pre-existing wood texture that you found, or did you
I found a wood texture that I basically sort of use it as like a well.
Right.
This is like fairly large.
Fair.
And I like positioned everything separately, go with
Yeah.
the same sort of relevant sizing.
Yeah, so that's pretty much how I've come to do wood, because if you guys have ever like done wood texturing or whatever, and you've spent like 30 minutes just breaking up and rotating wood textures to work with your UVs, I've come to the conclusion that like for my personal stuff at least, I hate doing that and it's awful. So yeah, like you just break up your UVs and then orient the UVs to work with the wood texture, and it's way faster.
The only things that are separate is that the back panel uses a different set of like wood face and wood seam because it's like a darker.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like there's a different texture for the wood grain and the wood face.
Gotcha. But yeah, so I think what I would do, I can't tell if you have any like customized textures on this in terms of like scratches or anything, but I would probably just grab the UVs and literally just shift them around for each of the panels. And that would vary, because like if you look at it, I mean if you zoom in like really close like I've done here, but you can kind of see like that repeating pattern. But again, just by like shifting the UVs or like rotating them around, you'd pretty much eliminate all of that.
There might be a little wiggle room because like it's like very vertically oriented, like the sort of well that I set up for it.
Okay.
So I would need to like see how I can space them apart from each other.
Fair. But yeah, so I mean, you can rotate your, well, I guess not 90 degrees, but you can like rotate your UVs 180 degrees. You could just like flip them so that if the other side of this has a different texture, so that one's showing. But yeah, I think that would be a worthwhile thing to do, especially now that you brought it up. I know that it exists, but if you show that closer, the repeating pattern will be obvious. So I think that would be a worthwhile thing to fiddle with.
For like the range sections, or like just like all the faces in general.
Mostly just anywhere where there's like a really obvious repeating pattern. Like I don't notice it so much like anywhere really else, I think, except right in here.
Like the innards, yeah, I could easily like section because it's like a fairly large wood texture.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like all the UVs are overlapping for these anyway. So if they overlap a little bit after you've shifted them, you're no really better or worse off.
It's already pretty garbled, so like I don't think like having
right.
a organized stack and all the garbled is gonna really
help or hurt.
No.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Fair. Cool. Anything else?
Nothing off the top of my head.
Cool. Anyone else have any thoughts or comments on this? I do really like this closed sign. I just like something about this render angle itself, I think, is like very satisfying. I don't know why.
I'm like looking at train station photos, so I try to like capture that kind of.
Yeah. I think now that and this is like a stupid small thing.
Yeah.
It seems weird that this is crooked, given that it's hanging from a central point.
It's hanging from a central point, but when you think about it, like a central point with like, say a nail, because they wouldn't like really have like proper screws.
Yeah.
Would have potential to be on tilt.
Yeah.
Because of just how that is set up, because like a nail surface is like relatively smooth, and like have, like a central axis point.
Fair. I still think it feels maybe a little center. I don't know. I like it being off center. I'm just saying, to me, it feels a little weird with like the central point, but small things.
I get that.
Yeah.
But it's just, I also have that same termite or whatever going off in my head about orientation stuff like that.
Fair. One thing you could do that'd be, the dumb person to me is like, aha, I've wadded the back with several pieces of gum, so it's clearly off weight from another render angle. This is a terrible suggestion. But yeah, so I mean, I think it might be cool to like maybe see a little bit more grime in this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I like how you've sort of gone through and like you can see the wood grain behind the text, and like you've sort of eaten away at the paint.
Yeah.
It's a fun touch.
The wood grains themselves aren't as gnarled as they could be. I could be easier on the sign, but since I'm welling for the desk, it might be a bit more difficult
Fair.
to do that.
Makes
But
sense.
I could definitely fix around the sign. It does use, because for the colored sections, I just found like a chipped paint
Yeah.
sort of thing. Just again multiply and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I do love a good multiply for stuff like this, but again, all the gum. No, I'm just kidding. But I think I don't know, a bunch of chewing tobacco maybe. Yeah, I don't know.
I'll do research.
I'm also kidding. If you want to put that in, it would be funny, but like, finish the rest of things first. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I like how you've done the thing where you have the light sort of shining across the desk, and then like the way it wraps around the objects does make really interesting highlights and stuff.
Yeah, I finally have
Got it working.
for my eye to stop being ignorant with pivot stuff.
Fair. Did you have any other plans for, I mean, obviously like texturing, but like, is there anything else that's being populated into here that's like not being, or like not in right now?
I just like made a quick book model a bit ago, and
Fair.
that I'll like throw texture on quick, and then I actually wanted to ask, so if I were to make envelopes, would those be viable as cards, or?
I would say you could use cards for envelopes. I would.
Or just like a really thin.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have two thoughts. So if they're far away, card it up. If you have a bunch of envelopes in here and you can do like a really close-up render of it, I might just make them like tiny rectangles.
Yeah, alright.
Um, Yeah.
It's gonna be like pretty negligible. It's just gonna be like a color anyways at that point.
Yeah, I was gonna say if you get close up to it, I do think it would be worth it to have the volume because you usually do see a little bit of that beveling like in the sides. But yeah, that'd be really fun to have like stacks of envelopes here. It feels like there should maybe be like a chair behind the desk or something, but maybe I don't know.
Yeah, I can make something. Possible.
But yeah, I mean I think like overall like the difference between like day and night lighting is pretty good.
First set is pretty apparent from the second set where I figured it out.
Oh yeah. I feel like that this feels maybe a little bit too blue to me.
Yeah.
And by too blue, I mean it's like, at least on my monitor, it's like almost tealy.
Yeah, it's more. It's like that.
It's like a green blue.
It's where like you actually have adjustment to it, and it's like completely dark out. Like you don't have any sort of outside obstruction.
Right. Is that like blue? I have no. It's been
It
forever.
takes in as blue, at least to how I've like.
Yeah. I just mean no. I mean like, I'm not.
No, I mean.
Yeah. I don't know. To me, it looks a little teal. I think, especially maybe on this part. I'm not objecting to the blue.
Yeah.
Maybe just like the shade of blue.
It would be like it's like a pretty. It would have to be pretty unobstructed.
Yeah.
Like light intake.
Oh, is there a light on top of the desk? Because that
Um,
looks like it's being lit by something to me.
No, I've had like a opposing directional lights as to like better fill the room that might have made it a bit bright.
Okay. Yeah, because I was gonna say it looks like for this, if there's no lights in the room, I would expect the brightest things by far to easily be like these light streams coming in here.
Yeah, which makes sense, but then.
Yeah, and then the desk is like really bright.
Yeah, because up to this point I still haven't really had like any sort of indoor source per se.
Fair.
Or like established one.
Gotcha.
Because as well wasn't as like indoor sources were a bit weird at the time.
Fair. But yeah, I think maybe just like twiddle around with the night lighting a little bit. I think
Yep.
you have like good bones to it, and just maybe like push a little bit farther.
Yeah,
But
again,
yeah,
I might switch to Arnold if it
fair. Cool. Any other questions, comments, etc. before we continue? All right. I do still need to do course evals. All right, Sue. All right, 2 more. Come on. Oh, right. I should click the buttons like a real person. Haha. Alright. So I feel like this one's actually like pretty obvious, but do you want to give us a quick rundown of the space and the objects that you made for this?
So it's kind of hard to see, but I'm going to read for the background. It's easier to see in the big version. Utensils, also hard to see, but there's a napkin on the table. 1950s diner chairs and tables, as well as a booth, and that's it.
Cool. Any like questions or issues you've been having, or kind of keep working?
No.
Cool. All right. So anyone have any thoughts and comments on the models or any of the lighting? Gonna pick a name. Last call. Haha. All right, Mike.
Can you go back, please?
Sure. To the. Oh, sorry. My bad. To this one or the night lighting?
Yeah, I feel like the daylighting is kind of flown out, but it looks good. I like the models themselves, but like you said, the napkin gives it. If I didn't know about the napkin, I wouldn't notice this with the lights, but I think it's blown out kind of where it's loose. Because if you look back and you see where the napkin is, and then you see that it completely the lights so much that you can't see that anymore. Maybe.
Wait. Just to clarify, is this the napkin or is this a menu?
Yeah, that's a no.
Okay. Yeah, that's a super shiny napkin.
I don't know why it has that sort of shade, but
I
that's close.
Yeah. I think that might. It looks like the napkin actually just like isn't visible in this render from the angle of it.
Yeah, that's what it is.
But yeah, I actually kind of like the difference in lighting. I think, and again, I think it's like a little bit of preference thing. But like, if you've ever like been in a diner or something, and they have shiny tables and you're by a window and you're just like sitting there being blinded by the reflection coming off the table, like, I would kind of believe that. And I actually think it's kind of cool, like what you've done with the lighting in combination with the render angle, where like this is really bright in the foreground and then it like kind of fades off in the background. It like really pushes your attention to, for me, to like the forks here, this chair, and then like this little table edge here. But yeah, and I think if you, for whatever you end up doing with the tops of the tables, I would maybe not do it for like the entire like screen, but if you did have like that really bright sheen from a window, I think that might actually be an interesting effect you could potentially use, especially like if you're rendering maybe from a different angle where it's like on one of the other sort of background tables. That would actually be kind of an interesting thing to leverage. But yeah, and I think it does look like there might be some kind of weird like artifacting or something happening.
I checked that out and that fixed it.
Okay, cool.
I saw that after I rendered it.
Yep. Yeah, I found so much. I did a diner for my CGI 1 final, and I found, like, after 8 hours of rendering for each frame, so many, like, stupid things that I didn't fix, and I'm like, oh, God, no. But yeah, I feel your pain. I think I might go through maybe and play with some of the shaping of the silverware a little bit.
Yeah, it needs to be definitely.
Say
arms
one more time?
arms need to be sharpened as well, which I
Deathworks.
did just now.
Gotcha. But yeah, I mean, it seems like, so you sound like you're modifying stuff. If it were me, I think I would make the arch in this part a little bit more prominent,
Yeah.
and maybe a little bit thinner. It feels kind of aggressive in terms of thickness, especially when you compare it to like the forks or the spoon and knife over here. And I think same thing with the spoon. Like I might expect this to be a little bit more arched in here, and then to make the spoon part a little bit spoonier, more curved, I guess. Yeah. But yes, I don't know if you've already done that or not, but
In the process.
cool. Also, just like utensils are one of those other things where like, if you guys ever model like one set of like decent generic utensils, you can reuse them forever and just like tweak the handles or something. But yeah, they're like screws where they're like one of those useful things just sort of have around in your bank of stuff. I do like the soda machine in the background. I like how that's sort of night lit. And I think I do like how you can sort of see the lighting and stuff, like where the lights are over the booths. Obviously, like watch the samples in the final renders, but I think overall the distinction, especially color-wise, between day and night is, for me at least, pretty successful. Yeah. One thing you might actually consider, I know a lot of times these diners will like leave their lights on during the day anyway.
Yeah.
So I can't tell actually if they're on in this. I would guess no.
The back ones were supposed to be on.
Okay.
It doesn't look like it's
Yeah.
but it was a little bit more dark, so we put the back lights on.
Gotcha. But yeah, I mean, I think it might be interesting if they were in there, and then you could also play. So like the indoor lights are like really warm, and then the outdoor lights are like pretty like cold and blue. So that would also create like a really interesting contrast within the space itself. I think in terms of the texturing for this, it might be interesting to get maybe a little bit more gloss in it. Maybe, and vinyl's usually like pretty grossly shiny.
Yeah, I've been looking for like like old booth texture. It's kind of like styrofoamy. If that makes sense.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Like little cracks.
Yeah, like that vine when it gets brittle and it starts like peeling away,
Yeah,
and then you have like
yeah.
that gross, very thick. Yeah. No, that'd be neat.
As well as another thing I want to do is kind of have like these fringes from fronts and backs.
Fringes?
How do I explain this? Little like extruded items.
I'm thinking you're talking about like tassels.
No, not tassels, because those are
Would make no sense. Is there a thing that I could Google?
1950s diner chair.
Oh, are you talking about those like frilly like chair skirts? Did I? I can't spell to save my life. Wait, is this not? Oh wait, that is dinner. Thank you.
It wasn't apparent in the white ones that it was kind of modeled after, or the red one, sorry.
Like this one?
Nah, down.
Down.
White in the center.
This guy? Oh, like this little bead
Yes,
of.
that.
Oh. Yeah. So that's usually I think just like a little piece of.
It's kind of a spine, really.
Yeah.
Wraps around.
Yeah. A lot of times it'll be filled with like something I think like a string or something, and then they'll just like sew that in as they're sewing the chair. Yeah, that would be cool. That'd probably be something that would be easier to model in, I think. And then I think also if you're gonna do that, it might. It looks like maybe the cushions I think are usually. Where am I going? It seems like the cushions are usually a little bit thicker where that happens. And I was gonna say it looks like the curves on your chair are like a little bit aggressive, but then I'm like, well, certainly can't object to that. I negate my own points. I do notice that was at least, it seems like if they're gonna do that, it looks like they usually just pick mostly the back part to do that, and the fronts seem to be, this is a weird chair design. But like the fronts usually seem straighter if they do that. So it might be kind of worth looking into. Because this, I mean, now that I think about it, they probably do that because if they come out far enough, it would actually like impede your legs moving. But yeah, like, so I think these feel maybe a little bit thick in comparison to other things. Like I think the overall shape is good. I'm certainly not going to harass you about the curve because I'm just like, I've literally just found reference on that. But I think, yeah, they feel maybe a little bit thick, and then this feels kind of thin to me, I think. But apart from that, I mean, I think it has an overall nice feel. Do you have any thoughts or like, is there anything you're planning on like putting on the walls or anything like that, or like any?
Actually, yeah, I found this old diner that's back in California.
Nice.
Near me, and they have like really old 1950s photos of those.
Nice.
So I was thinking of just putting a bunch of portraits.
That'd be pretty cool looking. Yeah. No, I'm into that. I know, like, yeah, a lot of places like that, I think we'll do like old pictures and records and stuff. Yeah, that feels totally with it. Cool. All right. Any other thoughts, comments, questions? All right. Last project for the day. Extract all of the things. Wahaha. Yes, great, good. All right, and it looks like we have another diner. So do you want to give us a quick rundown, I guess? Is there anything in the scene that you didn't make for this?
No.
Okay.
everything is behind it.
Cool. And did you have any like questions or anything you wanted addressed?
Not really. I guess opinion on the day lighting is kind of blown out.
Cool. What did you use for the lighting for this?
So I've got the sky dome out there,
Mhm.
but when that doesn't work, I've got a view area with
Okay.
sort of bump up the lightings from the outside.
Okay. And it looks like the area lights are kind of like by the windows?
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing I would recommend from that is, because I do agree that this, especially like this area right here, is a little bit blown out in a directional way that you can kind of tell it's an area light, I think. What I would do, are you using portal lights for the dome light at all?
No.
Okay. So I would use portal lights, so it probably will end up speeding up your renders pretty dramatically in my experience. And you can actually bump up the exposure or intensity of your HDRI. So I would probably, rather than adding additional area lights, just straight up just be like, HDR, be brighter, and you can set that up as high as you need to get it to light the space. If you're still having issues like reaching the other side of the room, you can compensate with some lighting on the ceiling, or you could even try turning on global illumination, and that usually will kind of bounce light everywhere and kind of lighten everything-ish up. But yeah, anyone else have any thoughts on the day lighting? I like this like beam of light coming through. It's cool. I like the night lighting. I think that looks pretty cool to me. One thing I think that would be neat actually for the night lighting, like you have this like neon sign here, like teasing. I was like, you totally spelled diner wrong, and I'm like, nope, I just can't spell. Don't ever ask me to spell anything for anyone. But one thing that would, I think, be neat is to get a little bit of that blue glow from the from this neon light. So, is this like emissive or a mesh light or?
It's a I just took the one of the material tab and what is it like illumination? What's that setting?
Oh, yeah, like emission.
Emission.
Yeah.
I just cranked it up as high as I could.
Gotcha. So I think with emission, you can actually set it up past 1 if you manually type in a number. You can, sometimes it'll tend to like blow out your object a little bit, but you could also turn that into a mesh light if you wanted to, and that would also help to get a little bit more realistic light from that. But yeah, I mean, that would definitely be like a really, because it looks like you went in, did you go in with curves and like manually pipe those letters?
I drew out the letters in Adobe, took the letters from Adobe Illustrator, pumped them into Arnold,
Okay.
and screwed a
Nice.
sphere.
Nice. Yeah, that's like a great feature. That is, yeah. But yeah, so I think if, like, that's such a cool, like, feature of the wall where I think it would be nice to really, like, give that some screen space in the night lighting. And that could be even, like, zooming in closer to it and being like, look at my giant, awesome diner sign. Did you have any other plans for the space in terms of, like, what other objects, I assume, like, diner tables and stuff are being shared between teammates and stuff, yeah.
Just got a bunch of them.
Cool.
Probably make some stuff for the wall.
Sweet. Me being the crazy person I am with crazy lighting, I'm like, oh, it would be so great to put like a whole wall of just neon signs if you want to make it look really trashy. For my project, I would totally make it look trashy. But yeah, so I mean, I think like lighting looks pretty good. One thing that might be nice is to see a little bit of lighting like from the ceiling itself. Like just physically see like where that light is coming from. 'Cause this feels like, I mean, right now it feels like kind of like a depressing empty bingo hall. Once it's populated, I feel like it'll pretty much eliminate that, but like, this is the kind of space where I would usually, again, like expect to see some kind of lighting, pendant lighting, or like, you know, lights in here, like just weird fluorescent bars of awfulness, but I think seeing that would help to add another little element of visual interest to the scene, especially if you're going to keep these like wide angles of the entire space. It would be interesting to have, again, something on the ceiling. Put in drop ceilings. Ugh. But yeah, all right. And I think for the jukebox, are you still working on the textures for these, or?
No, that's more or less it.
Okay. So one thing I would recommend doing, if you have the time, is make like an extra little emission map for this, and if you can make these like outer little like tube things glowing, I feel like usually they're lit up like, I don't know, I look at jukeboxes a lot for some reason because they're fun to me, but yeah, like if you could get, is there a light in here?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I was gonna say, like, if you could achieve like that effect in here, because this has like a really like satisfying sort of like deep glow to it, if you could get that into that tube, I think that would be really, really good. Also, maybe look at, like, this is a really nice gradient transition here, same here. If there's a way to maybe smooth these out a little bit, these feel a little bit harsh in comparison to the rest, I think. But yeah. Cool. I still like the like beams of light you have cast across stuff. I think especially like once there's like stuff in the scene, that'll end up looking like really neat once it's hitting other things. Yeah, cool. Any other questions, comments, etc.? All right. In that case, I fairly certain, did I miss anyone that submitted stuff? I think that was all of them. All right. In that case,